Hello, everyone, and welcome to English Core Conversation. I'm really glad you're here today, taking another step toward advanced English fluency. In this session, we're going to explore a topic that affects every single person, no matter where they live or what they do: decision-making. At C1 and C2 levels, English isn't just about grammar or vocabulary anymore. It's about expressing complex ideas, reflecting on experiences, and discussing abstract concepts in a natural way. And decisions are a perfect subject for that because they connect to psychology, emotions, risk, and personal growth. Let's begin with a simple reflection. Think about the last important decision you made. Was it related to work, education, relationships, or maybe your future plans? Did you make that decision quickly, or did you spend a long time thinking about it? Advanced English conversations often begin with reflections like this because they invite explanation rather than short answers. You might say something like, "I tend to overthink important decisions because I want to consider every possible outcome," or "I usually rely on my instincts, although I try to balance that with logic." Notice how these responses explain reasoning, not just facts. That's what makes them sound advanced. Why decisions are so difficult? One reason decisions can be challenging is that they often involve uncertainty. In real life, we rarely have complete information. We don't know exactly what will happen, how people will react, or whether we'll regret our choice later. That's why fluent speakers often use expressions like, "It's hard to predict how things will turn out," or "There's always an element of risk involved," or "I had to make the best decision with the information I had." These phrases show nuance and realism, which are key characteristics of C1, C2 communication. Some people are very decisive. They make choices quickly and move forward without hesitation. Others prefer to analyze every detail before committing to anything. Which type do you think you are? An advanced response might sound like this: "I'd say I fall somewhere in the middle. I like to think things through carefully, but I also know that waiting too long can create more problems than it solves." The influence of small decisions. When we think about life choices, we often imagine big moments: choosing a career, moving to another city, or ending a relationship. But in reality, small daily choices often have the greatest long-term impact. For example, how you spend your free time, what habits you build, who you surround yourself with. These choices seem minor at the time, but over months or years, they shape your life significantly. You might express this idea in English like this: "Looking back, I realized that my daily habits mattered more than any single big decision." Or, "It wasn't one turning point, but a series of small choices that changed everything." Emotional versus logical decisions. Another interesting aspect of decision-making is the balance between emotion and logic. Some decisions feel purely practical, others feel deeply emotional. Have you ever made a decision that looked logical on paper but didn't feel right emotionally? Many people experience this. Advanced speakers often describe it using phrases like, "Part of me knew it was the sensible choice, but something still felt off," or "I tried to approach it rationally, but my emotions kept getting in the way. In the end, I had to follow what felt right rather than what seemed safe." The fear of making the wrong choice. One of the biggest reasons people struggle with decisions is fear. Not just fear of failure, but fear of regret. People often worry about questions like, "What if I choose the wrong path? What if there was a better option? What if I look back and wish I had done something else?" You might express it like this: "I wasn't afraid of the challenge itself, I was afraid of choosing incorrectly." Or, "I think the hardest part wasn't the decision, but the possibility of regret afterward." learning to accept imperfect decisions. As people grow older, many realize something important. There is rarely a perfect decision. Most choices involve trade-offs. You gain something, but you also give something up. That's why fluent speakers often say things like, "At some point you just have to commit and move forward," or "No decision guarantees success, but hesitation guarantees nothing changes," or "I've learned that progress matters more than perfection." Living with the consequences of our choices. Let's go deeper. One of the most interesting things about decisions is that their impact isn't often immediate. Sometimes a choice feels small at the moment, but years later we realize how significant it was. You might say, "I didn't realize at the time how much that decision would shape my future." Or, looking back, "That moment turned out to be more important than I expected." Or, "It seemed minor then, but it changed the direction of my life." The illusion of the right path. Many people believe life has one correct direction, but real life is rarely that simple. You might express this idea by saying, "I used to think there was a perfect choice, but now I believe most paths can work if you commit to them." Or, "Success often depends less on the decision itself and more on what you do afterward." Or, "There isn't always a right or wrong choice, sometimes there are just different experiences." How we justify our decisions. After we choose something, we often create meaning around it. For example, "It was challenging, but it taught me resilience," or "It pushed me out of my comfort zone," or "I didn't understand it then, but later I saw how it helped me grow." These reflections add depth and maturity to conversation. When decisions don't work out. Of course, not every decision leads to positive results. At an advanced level, we don't just say "it was bad," we describe it with nuance. For example, "It didn't turn out the way I hoped, but it still taught me something valuable." Or, "I wouldn't call it a mistake, but it wasn't the outcome I expected. In the long run, even that difficult choice helped me understand what I really wanted." Responsibility and ownership. Eventually, people begin to see that avoiding decisions is also a decision. You might say, "At some point, I realized that responsibility comes with every choice." Or, "No one controls everything, but we can control how we respond." The bigger picture. Now let's step back even further. Life is not defined by one decision. Paths change, directions shift, new opportunities appear. You might express this idea like this: "I used to think one decision could ruin everything, but now I see life keeps offering new chances." Or, "One choice matters, but it's never the whole story." Adaptation matters more than certainty. Two people can make the same decision and experience completely different outcomes. Why? Because outcomes depend on how we respond afterward. You might say, "It wasn't the decision itself that mattered most, it was how I handled what came next." Or, "Flexibility turned out to be more important than certainty." Meaningful choices over perfect ones. With time, people often stop chasing perfect decisions and start focusing on meaningful ones. I stopped trying to choose perfectly and started trying to choose honestly. Or, "I realized clarity matters more than certainty." Or, "Waiting for the perfect moment often means never moving at all." Decisions shape identity. Perhaps the deepest insight is this: our lives are not only shaped by our decisions slowly shape who we become. You might say, "My choices gradually shaped my confidence," or "The more I chose growth over comfort, the more that became part of who I am," or "My identity wasn't fixed, it was built through decisions." Final reflection practice. Before we finish, take a moment to think in English. What decision changed your life the most? Do you trust your instincts or your analysis more? What kind of choices do you want to make in the future? Even if your sentences aren't perfect, thinking deeply in English is what builds real fluency. Final closing thought. We often think decisions determine our future, but in many ways, our future is shaped not by one single choice, but by the pattern of choices we make over time. Fluency works the same way. You don't become fluent from one perfect lesson. You improve through consistent practice, reflection, and real communication. Thank you for being here with English Core Conversation. Keep listening, keep thinking in English, and I'll see you in the next lesson.